Hi, and here is part two to our August 23rd, 2022 celebration of the 22nd anniversary of when our fictional hero, NKUltra Love, stood on a hilltop in Texas and declared freedom for all humankind. I forgot to tell you in part one, guess what happened? The extraterrestrial beings that were enslaving humanity in something called the game and using the guise of the international cabal called the mafias, plural, let people go for a while. Yeah. In our story, they actually set people free and didn't ask anybody any protection questions for fully 6 months. They did it because they recognized that at least somebody in that species called Homo sapiens had evolved past the point where they could tolerate the game and refused slavery outright and was willing to say so, willing to talk about it, in spite of the fact that in the game, once people get brought in, they're not supposed to talk about being enslaved at all. They're not supposed to give voice to their pain. But it turns out that in the way the story goes, in Return to Innocence, Game Over, it was basically a Hollywood mafia and certain politicians that started the game up again because and politicians were global, not just in the fictional probable timeline United States, because they perceived that they got something out of it. Now, some people really like to gamble with their own lives and certainly yours, and they thought that they were getting financial profit and social status and political power and other perks by playing games with your lives and their own and that of their children. So it was actually the human beings themselves that brought back the curse called the game onto Homo sapiens. So 20 some odd years later, and who boy, some of them have been pretty darned odd, in our saga of NKUltra Love and her fight against the game, uh, we find that it's still going on and she and others are still fighting it. But never doubt that one person can inspire others and that others can inspire the masses. Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of committed, dedicated people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. When you really consider that and understand that it's a pretty phenomenal thing for her to have said. But never doubt that one person who utterly and absolutely refuses a context to be imposed upon her or him that is untenable and unholy and unnatural and just plain old out and out not right, uh, can inspire others to raise up and refuse to play the game. Many, many years ago, and let me step out of the science fiction frame for a minute. Many, many years ago, I was talking to my father, and he said he wanted me to remember all of my life something called erosion. We were talking about physical sciences and things of that nature, but he said, Nancy, erosion is one of the most important things that you can understand. He said that something as soft and seemingly gentle and essentially useful or harmless, like water, like drops of water, can, when there are enough of them, wear away stone. A stone as hard as granite, a stone as hard as a mountain. And he said that look at all the things that erosion has done. It made the Grand Canyon. It made, all these wonderful things with drops of water. And he said, imagine, he said that he knew that at some point I would be a freedom fighter. He could already tell. And he and my mother were raising me to be a freedom fighter. He was doing that on purpose because he hated oppression as much as I did, having been in the military and other forms of slavery. Yes, I said that. And he said that imagine uh, a great structure with large pillars, and this structure had stood for a very, very, very long time, and it seemed immovable, and it seemed so permanent and so political and such a part of the social community that it seemed like that structure would always stand. And he said he thought that it would be somebody like me that would just start chipping away at it. Just stand there at one pillar and chip and chip and chip and chip until the pillar weakened, cracked, and in fact broke and fell. And he said, Nancy, once one pillar goes, it's likely the whole structure can fall. And he said, even if it takes you a lifetime, you keep chipping away. And I said, first of all, thank you for thinking that I could be that durable and that persistent and have that power. But the second, do you know what I would do if I found such a structure and deemed that it needed to fall? He said, no, what would you do? And I said, I would run into the fields and find the others and find the other citizens. And I would coerce them and beg them and plead with them and convince them and inspire them to come back to the structure with me and chip away at the other pillars while I'm chipping away at mine. And that way, together, the other citizens and I could make the structure fall much more quickly. And my father sort of teared up and he said, if anybody could do it, it would be you. So I hope you find those other citizens, Nancy, because that structure needs to fall. In some of the uh, installments of this science fiction story I'm telling you, I talk about unanimity and how the way it works on this planet and others is that if the extraterrestrial species finds that only even 10%, even 1 out of 10 people refuse to play the game, they call that unanimity has been achieved, and they give up. They set everybody free. So on this day, August 23rd, 2022, the 22nd anniversary of the day when our hero NKUltra Love stood on a mountaintop in Texas and declared that all people were her people and that no species, no force, no oppressor could enslave humanity with her permission, with her acquiescence. On the day when our hero NKUltra Love said, I would rather be, I would rather know that it was an extraterrestrial species that imposed the game and the mafia on this world than to be a member of a species that had done this to itself. On the day when NKUltra had the strength of character and the massive, massive spirit to say no to the game. This is a a triumph of an individual, indeed, but it needs to be. I think you see the parallels in your own life and in society. It needs to be a triumph for us all. Here's to unanimity. Resistance is not futile. Resistance is, in fact, essential.